Mary left.
What happened to Mary?
Uh-huh. What's SCA? I'm not trying to be funny. I really don't know what that is. Cable access?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm like, no.
Superintendent, everybody get down and kissed his ring.
Yeah, well, I think he expects it. It's going to be his way.
Good evening, Tom. It's Lisa. Good evening, Tom. Hello.
Hello, yes?
Oh, okay, it's Lisa Johnson.
Okay, hi, Lisa.
Hi.
I can do that. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. I have no idea what this is. Okay.
Hi, Mary.
Sorry, I'm gonna stick this. Yeah.
This conference will now be recorded.
right, so you're in the microphone.
Hey everybody, it's Mary Brainy. I am trying, hello, Mary Brainy here. Sorry, I'm trying to get on the computer and it just won't let me.
We can hear you, Mary.
So I'm
Just can't see you.
yeah, I'm calling in on my phone. If you just hold on 1 second, part of the deal is sharing the screen with some of the regular, some of the information. That Tom has it though, so I'm pretty sure he can do it. Let me give this one more shot and see if I can see if it'll work this time. I was on and I had no sound, and then I was on and I had no picture. So let me just one more try. And if it doesn't work, we'll just do it by phone and I'll turn the TV on so at least I can see you all. All right, one more shot. All right. Oh, that's fine. Come on. All right. Yeah, it's just whatever's going on. It's just not working. All right. I'm going to go to Facebook. I can see you all on Facebook. You can hear me, right?
Yes, you're coming through.
Okay, good. Sorry. So sorry. Technology is wonderful until it's not. All right. Let's see. That being said, it is 6:04 p.m. and we'll call the meeting to order. This is a special. This is the March 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Spencer Finance Committee, joint with the Spencer Board of Selectmen. Thank you for all coming. Welcome. Ralph, would you like to call your meeting to order as well?
Yeah, I will call the Board of Selectmen to order. I see John is with us. What other select board members are there, please?
This is Gary. I'm on.
Gary, John. Wendy, are you there?
I am, Ralph. How are you?
Good, Wendy. How are you? Okay.
I'm good, thanks.
Tony, are you there? Tony Pepe. Well, he may join us in a few moments. Thank you, Mary. I'll call to order.
Ralph.
Okay.
Yes.
Ralph. This is Ted Boulay on East Brookfield Board of Selectmen. I'm just listening in.
Ted, you're welcome to. It's a public meeting and welcome. Happy to have you.
All right. I just wanted to listen in on this school committee piece. That's all.
That makes sense. Sounds good, Ted. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah, I can see your name, Ted. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right. So
thank you.
I will do my due diligence here, making the following announcement. The meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, pursuant to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have suspended public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. For this meeting, all members are remote, and as such, all votes will be taken by roll call in accordance with Regulation 940, CMR 29.10 of the open meeting law. I just want to take a quick view to see if we have a quorum of Finance Committee members, because I just heard from Bill Wall that he won't be here. And
Madam Chair, so callers 1 through 5, I don't know who they are.
Okay, so hold on, just give me 1 second. Bill Shemus has kindly agreed to take the minutes since Bill Wall is not here. So I'm looking at 2, 3, Dennis. Okay, so I can see Finance Committee members Ed, Nancy Tame, Chris Bowen, Dennis O'Leary. Anybody else? Any other Finance Committee members?
Chris Woodbury's on the phone.
Okay, Chris, can you say your name again so we can see your, can you speak again, please, so we can see what number you are?
Chris Woodbury is on the phone.
All right, thanks. I'm not seeing a flash. Oh, well.
It's caller 4.
Lisa Johnson, Town Clerk, is here.
Oh, thank you.
Chris is 4.
Okay. So I'm not sure that we have a quorum of finance, so we'll skip the minutes of the March 29th. On March 9th, rather, meeting, we'll defer that. So tonight, we are welcoming a number of department heads from various places to the meeting to present their budgets. And first up is the Spencer Brookfield Regional School representatives, Dr. Paul Hahi, Superintendent, and Mr. Gary Suter, the business manager. And I also see a number of other school folk rather, on the screen. So welcome to all of you. I'm going to ask that the Selectmen and members of the Finance Committee allow Dr. Hahi and Mr. Suter to do their presentation without asking questions, if you don't mind. I think in the interest of streamlining the process, it will be very helpful if we let them do their presentations, and then we can take notes and ask questions.
This conference will now be recorded.
Mr. Suter and Dr. Hahi agree that perhaps finance folks could, and selectmen, if they had follow-up questions after the meeting tonight, maybe we could perhaps have them put them in writing and send them to me, and I can forward them to you. That might be helpful. Right now, there is someone who needs to mute their phone or their device. We're getting a lot of extra noise in the background. So if you have, please use your telephone or your tablet or whatever it is that you're calling in on. If you can see the screen, if you have a green telephone receiver, you are not muted. So if you are not muted, please find the mute button and hit it, because we are getting a lot of background noise and we can't really hear, and we can't necessarily hear the presentation. Thank you. Good. So, maybe not. So welcome, Dr. Hahi and Mr. Suter, and I know that you're going to talk about the budget that we all have copies of, and we can put it up on the screen. I would ask that you would talk also a little bit about the ESSER circumstances, because they are brand new, and they do have a factor, and I know they're hot off the press. They just came down. A lot of people have questions about the budget. So, again, sorry. No, yes, no. There's just a lot of background noise. So, whoever you are, please mute your phone. All right. In the meantime, Dr. Hayes, Peter, are you ready? Would you like to go?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Brady, for the opportunity to be here this evening. Thank you so much to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee of Spencer. Also, thank you to Mr. Boulay for making the time as well on behalf of East Brookfield. It's an honor and privilege to be before you this evening. As the superintendent of schools, understanding the needs of the district was one of my first challenges upon my arrival to the district some 2.5 years ago. Where we've come from and where we want to go are crucial questions to ask when building any budget. And what we are going to be presenting you this evening is not just my view of next year's budget and what it should be, but a true reflection of the many conversations and discussions with administrators, staff, students, and parents over the past 2.5, coming up on 3 years, to truly understand the needs of our district. Of special note is the fact that we have been through what now is a full year of COVID-19. And as you're well aware, we have been asked to reopen our schools full-time, 5 days a week, April 5th for K through 6 and grades 7 through 12, April 26th. So we have a lot of work to do in a small amount of time, and are working diligently inside the district daily to prepare ourselves for all of our students and their return. In the building of this budget, my primary charge was the same for each and every person I spoke with, especially the staff. Please tell me what you need next year to meet the needs of every student in this district. We looked at each line in the budget to make sure each reflected what the intersection of data, analysis, and discussion represents. Recently, I had the opportunity to read a book over the February break by Jamie Vollmer, Schools Cannot Do It Alone. His premise is that corporations no longer control land and natural resources, they now control knowledge. He goes on to say in today's economy, quote unquote, have been flexible organizations that give all employees greater discretion and control. Low and mid-level workers routinely direct physical, monetary, and intellectual resources that were once exclusive domains of upper management. Employees who were previously relegated to menial tasks now are daily called upon to add value, variety, and yes, even convenience to existing products and services that are delivered to the public. They must have the skills to acquire and interpret information culled from diverse sources, presented in multiple formats, unquote. And quite frankly, sorting all this out for validity and reliability in our current climate as it is during COVID has made it even more of a challenge. Yet in a single generation, Vollmer has asserted we have gone from requiring universal student attendance to truly demanding universal student achievement. This is the goal of the governance team, our school committee, our leadership team, and each and every employee within our district. This FY22 budget outlines what is needed to put together the staff, programs, services, and resources for us to be highly effective moving forward, coming out of COVID and into next year in the fall, moving forward. We looked at a number of different types of budgets over the past 2.5 years, from level funded to level service, zero-based, and the like. We have decided to replicate our staff and programs with no additional increases, trying to maintain a level service in our presentation this evening. The expectation here was with the understanding that updating in really primary budget drivers would look as follows: updating curriculum materials, textbooks, and supplies, professional development as a key driver to improving instruction in the classroom, technology infrastructure that would meet the needs to match not only next-gen MCAS, but the challenges of any future our students engage in, so that the future capacity and data collection requirements are met no matter where, when, or how. Social and emotional needs of students are becoming more and more complex and presenting at an earlier age and lasting longer. Additional support is needed to allow all of our students the opportunity to succeed in any environment, and as is required by Mass General Law. The district historically has cut a number of staff and programs over the years, which we have worked diligently to reconstitute by realigning vertically and horizontally special education, English language learners, and English as a second language, along with the needs of diverse learners, with a lens toward equity, making sure we are giving students what they need when they need it, and providing them with more choices and opportunities aligned to their interests, not only for Spencer and East Brookfield, but the Southern Worcester County region. As you know, the market is becoming more and more competitive in public education. Every dollar counts, and it's our charge and our job to be good stewards with the dollars we have. Moving forward, the question we have before you this evening in our presentation, which we will turn over to Mr. Tudor. It looks at how do we want to compete in this new economy, as outlined by Volmer, and have a future that our students can hit the ground running and meeting every challenge, no matter what it is or where it is in the world in which they live. At this time, I'd like to turn over the financial aspects of this report to Mr. Suter for review with you and the public. And thank you again for making the time to host us this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Hahi. So tonight I'm going to walk you through the fiscal 22 operating budget for the regional school district as approved by the school committee at the last public hearing that we had. Due to the late approval of the state budget for the current fiscal year, the district made last-minute changes to the current year's budget to accommodate the anticipated loss in revenue while maintaining our ability to continue to provide quality education for our students throughout the health crisis. In order to maintain a basic level of service, the school and the committee approved pre-purchasing supplies and technology out of our fiscal 20 budget in order to alleviate some stress in the fiscal 21 budget. This allowed us to reduce the current year's budget and assessments for both communities by a total of $339,000. Along with the pandemic came some financial relief from the federal government. The district received $337,000 in CARES Act funding, $203,000 in ESSER 1 funding, and we anticipate $739,534 in ESSER 2 funding, which I'll go into in a little bit. Both the CARES Act and the ESSER 1 funding were used to purchase personal protective equipment for employees and staff and students, technology for increased remote learning, repairs and updates to our heating and ventilation equipment, and items and equipment that we needed for food distribution since the pandemic began. The ESSER 2 funding, which is expected to allow municipalities to access up to 75% of the amount that we are anticipated to receive, to reduce or eliminate their fiscal 22 increase in the minimum local contribution. Although it's included in the governor's budget and has not been approved yet, we do anticipate that it will be approved. Each town would be required to take a formal vote of the Board of Selectmen to avail themselves of the ability to reduce their minimum local contribution for fiscal 22 by up to the maximum amount for each community. So in the case of East Brookfield, it would be $52,059. And for the case of Spencer, it would be $210,244. So each town can use up to that amount to reduce their current year's increase in minimum local contribution. And what needs to be considered when doing that is that the amount that they reduce their local contribution in the current year's budget that we're talking about, fiscal year 22, that amount will still be included in the increase in fiscal 23. So when we get to fiscal 23, you'll have to make up the amount that you reduced the current year's assessment by and whatever the increase is for fiscal 23. So you have to be aware of that when you take that vote, and you'd have to provide for those funds in the following fiscal year. So that being said, the first page of the budget is kind of a little recap of the ESSER money and some language that came right out of the Department of Ed's guidance on how to use it. So basically, we're expecting $729,000 from the federal government for our ESSER 2 allocation. According to the guidance, 75% of that allocation is put aside so that each town could reduce their minimum local contribution up to the $547,000. Since the combined increase for both towns is only $262,000, that's the most we can access. So that's the most we need to put aside as a district for each town to decide whether they want to reduce their assessments. So as I said earlier, in the case of East Brookfield, they would be able to lower their assessments by $52,059, and Spencer would be able to reduce their assessment by a maximum of $210,244. If either or both communities vote to do that, then the school district would then be obligated to take those funds and spend them on net school spending allowable items. So it gets a little convoluted in this whole calculation. But what the minimum contributions are from each community, plus what the state gives us for Chapter 70, we have to spend the total amount of that on net school spending, which is pretty much instructional costs, administrative costs. It's pretty much everything except debt, transportation, and those sorts of things, large capital expenses. And if we don't meet net school spending, we could get penalized if we go over a certain percentage, but whatever we don't meet it by gets added to the following year, and we have to keep spending enough money until we make up that deficit. So it's a multi-pronged problem that we would have if we didn't meet net school spending. So the state has said that if communities want to reduce their assessments, we will spend those funds, and I've listed them down below, on positions that would qualify for net school spending and that are in the budget due to the COVID crisis. So we've added some paraprofessionals, a special education teacher. It's all special education related, and it's all due to the pandemic and the loss of learning and the additional services that students need. So we would spend the money on those items, and we would get credit towards net school spending. So I know Chairman Brainy has asked for no questions, but before I get into the budget, if there are any questions on the net school spend, on the ESSER money, maybe we could deal with that before we get into the numbers on the budget, or do you want me to just keep going?
No, that's fine. If that works up for you, I just want the flow to be good. Yeah, so that's fine. So if anyone has questions on ESSER.
All right, I'll keep going.
Mary?
Oh, sorry.
Bill?
Can Gary just clarify, so normally in doing budgets, we operate by the principle of positions that expenses for positions are recurring expenses. We cover those with recurring revenue. So if he's going to address that in the budget presentation, fine, but in essence, how are the recurring expenses of the positions going to be covered when the ESSER funds run out?
Well, at this point in time, we don't know that those positions will be recurring. The intent of that ESSER money is to address the shortcomings created by the pandemic. And so these positions were put in the budget this year to help students, deal with remote learning, hybrid learning, social emotional issues, and all that goes with, or all that's gone along with the COVID crisis. So the grant would run for 2 years. Some of these positions, we would hope that at the end of the 2-year period, we have made up enough ground that they would most likely not be needed anymore. But there's no way for us to foresee that right now. We don't know how long the effects of the COVID crisis will last with students. So the intent of that ESSER money is to put it to use to help them make up ground that they've lost as a result of the pandemic. So I guess I really can't answer your question, but we're hoping that in 2 years that we've made up most of that ground and the paraprofessionals would not be needed. The additional positions wouldn't be needed.
Could I jump in on that? So much as I began to mention in the budget drivers portion of my opening, updated curriculum materials and textbooks, professional development as a key to improving instruction, technology infrastructure to match needs, future capacity and data collection requirements, and then technology that could increase with wireless devices to deliver teaching and learning regardless of the model that is adopted, remote, hybrid, in person. But there were 2 drivers that we started talking about last year that I think are very important and key in this budget that a year ago or 14, 15 months ago were nice to haves and now are considered essential as we turn the corner to come out of the pandemic. We see early childhood education as where we need to invest our tax dollars and the monies that we have been afforded by way of the grant program. And so every dollar spent between pre-K to 3, even to grade 5, is less needed to be spent supporting grades 6 through 12 with remediation. So what we want to do with this budget is be very mindful, very strategic, and very purposeful in targeting skills, necessary skills for our students as they return to us. In April, May, and June right now, we have positions identified as necessary, really so we can be strategic and targeted and kind of get students and the staff acclimated to the routines and the rigor and relevance to identify through assessments need areas so that if it's phonemic awareness or encoding or decoding, say in literacy, our teachers are very purposeful in how and what and how they go about their business in teaching reading in grades K through 3, and how they then target and purposefully go after the needs of our children as they get older in the upper grades. The second part of that equation that I think is important to note is the increased costs coming through special ed, whether it be with transportation or placements, as well as our second language learners and expanding diverse learner needs. They're not going down, they're going up. So I'm not telling anything you don't know as a finance committee or a board of selectmen. Today, in the budget drivers, coming out of this pandemic, again, we were set up to deal with it a certain way. And so things that were nice to have a year ago in our budget that we presented a year ago now are necessaries because social and emotional needs of our students are becoming more and more complex, and they're clearly being presented to us at an earlier age, younger, and lasting longer. Therefore, additional support is needed to allow all students the opportunity to succeed in any environment, as I mentioned earlier. And it really is up to us to kind of be purposeful and meaningful with the dollars we have. The purpose of the program in ESSER 2, without stealing too much of Mr. Suter's thunder, that's different than other grants provided by the federal government, is the fact that we can supplant the monies. Typically, you are not authorized to do that. But because of the pandemic and the needs that we're about to encounter as students return to us, the federal government is mindful of the fact that we're going to have these needs in real time and have to adjust our sales to meet those needs in real time. So we are authorized and available and allowed to supplant, which is not typical, not typical. And I just think that's an important point to make in relation to your question, Mr. Shemet, to the chair. He'll be here.
Yeah, so I'll just follow up on that, what Dr. Hahi talked about and what Mr. Shemet asked. So in regards to recurring revenue, I guess, as I mentioned at the beginning of the ESSER explanation, if each town took full advantage of the money to reduce their assessment, that $262,000 that would be used to pay for those positions would then be added back by the state next year and be required to be included in their minimum local contribution. So in that regard, it would be recurring revenue. It would be paid for out of the grant, and then next year those funds would be returned to the minimum contribution calculation, and then it would be paid for by the community. So I don't know if that answers the question. So if we move on to the cover sheet of the assessment calculation, it's kind of the high-level overview of what the budget looks like and how we're paying for that budget during the current fiscal year. So the shaded columns are the current fiscal year's calculations. Kind of the shaded three columns in the middle are what the assessments and the budget look like if either town does not vote to take advantage of the ESSER reduction. That's what the assessments would look like, and that's how the budget would look. And then the last four columns, they kind of take a look at reducing the minimum contributions by the amounts that the maximum amounts that are allowable, and then what the assessments would look like as a result of that. So,
Gary, I have a question, Gary. Excuse me.
Yep.
Just so I get it clear in my brain here, if we don't take the ESSER money, we have to come up with the 210, 244 at this point in time, and those will cover the positions that ESSER would otherwise cover. Am I right?
Right.
Okay. So
That's
basically, it's we have a couple of good choices here. One is we say no, and we pay for it. Okay, right now, or we say yes, and we have 2 years of not paying for it, and maybe in the third year it will go away, or in the third year we pay for it ourselves over our town budget, and given the increases that you're going to require, all right, we will start laying people off in the town of Spencer. I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell Dr. Hahi right now, that is not going to happen on my watch. And nobody cares more about the kids in this town than me. Trust me. Okay? I've lived here. I volunteered thousands of hours with kids in this town. Ask people in their 50s and 60s who I coached and who I worked with in youth projects and whatnot. All right? But we have to have a way to pay for that. Now, if the O word comes up, then we are going to need the school committee in mass to support an override to cover not only that, but to cover what else might be cut from the towns. I'm not sparring for a fight here, but I'm very concerned. And I believe you have other positions that are being put in besides these that are not presently working in the Spencer East Brooklyn Regional School District. And I'm hoping you'll get to that later in the meeting so that everyone here has a clear picture. Thank you.
So to that point, if I may, Madam Chair, or is it, may I respond?
It's a joint meeting.
It's a
Go
joint
ahead.
meeting.
Okay, I don't know if I go through the madam or if I go through the gentleman. But
Either one.
To that point, excellent point raised. I understand the model that Mr. Shemet explained about recurring funds and how that works on municipal. I get it. We agree. I don't think there's any dispute about what you're saying. We're here to work in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration. And as I've said, these positions are necessary positions. We're working to put these things in with the funds that we've been allowed to utilize so that we can meet the challenges that are coming at us in real time and hopefully realize some efficiencies and effectiveness in terms of our practices so that we don't have expenses on the other side. The positions specifically that I see as vital after talking to our leadership team and our governance team, as well as people in town and our faculty, staff, and administration and everyone in the district, we need, these aren't nice to haves, we need these things, a special ed teacher, a counselor, a preschool teacher that can meet the needs of diverse learners and severely disabled children in preschool. These aren't, like I said, nice to haves, they're necessaries. And there's zero expense in this operating budget should we use the ESSER 2. As you said, we're not here to spar. I agree with you. We're here to work together and work the problem. But as I've stated in other meetings, throughout my tenure, I will never come before the board or the committee or anyone in either of the two towns and speak of override without including all the departments and having a much more open dialogue with all stakeholders. That's not what we're about here in our district. We're very mindful, very, very mindful of how important it is. And your points are not lost on us, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair. So please know that we're sensitive to what you're saying. We hear you, and we will continue to work with you in a spirit of cooperation to get there. The idea here is if we don't do this, we're going to be paying on the other end. And I don't want to pay $2 later for something I know we could do for $1 or 50 cents now. The costs don't go down, they go up. So
I'm very cognizant of that, and I thank you for what you said.
No, yeah.
I just bear in mind, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I guess I'm gonna. Bear in mind the cuts the town made 2013 that neither you nor any member of your school committee or administrative staff was responsible for. You know what I'm talking about. Everybody watching this meeting knows what I'm talking about. And we laid off people then, all right, that have not been brought back to work in 8 years. All right, the library in this town is not open on Saturdays. It's a travesty. It's not open on Fridays. The town hall, we got it open for Thursday mornings a couple of years ago. It's still not open Thursday afternoons, and it's not open on Friday. This is a town of 12,000 people. This isn't a small little Mayberry with 2 or 3 or 4,000 people. So I just want to make that clear, and I'm happy you're willing to work with us. And if you're working with us, we'll certainly be happy to work with you. Thank you.
The good news is there's no shortage of work, Mr. Chair. The question is how we choose to meet it. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has done a good job giving us work, and that's the good news. Is there's no shortage of work. The bad news is, there's not enough resource to go around. So it's incumbent on everyone listening on this call to understand the importance of collaboration and cooperation for us to have success. And that's not the school department, that's all of us on this call tonight. For Spencer, East Brookfield, as municipalities, as well as the school department. For us to have success and for us to be competitive, we've got to be willing to invest, but invest smartly in an intelligent way and with purpose. And, the tagline of the district, much like the town line of the town is look to the future. Well, no offense, you hired me to be the leader. I'm leading. Leadership's about action. It's not about position. It's not about sitting on my fanny. You hired me to do a job. I'm going to do that job to the best of my ability with purpose, with our team. And I have every confidence that when I go before and make recommendations, they're with data and knowns. And that's how we've always operated since my arrival. I'm very proud of our leadership team, our faculty, our staff, and everyone inside this district. They've done God's work throughout this pandemic. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. We've provided meals. We've provided kits, door-to-door service, arts, crafts, teaching and learning all hours, day and night. I can't be more proud of the people inside this district and our ability to serve. And that's not to say we're perfect. You know, there've been tons of growing pains, but we've got to be intelligent and really targeted and purposeful, much like the tagline says, if we're going to not only look to the future, but work for the future. Because for us, and I know I'm telling everybody on this call nothing new, like you said, Mr. Chair, for us, the building project is, you know, our end game as a regional school district. So we know that our flagship needs some TLC. And everyone on this call wouldn't be on the call if they didn't care and want to see that come to fruition. So again, this is yet another carrot, for lack of a better word, or motivator for us to get together and continue to be collaborative throughout this process. My recommendations in partnership with the business administrator have already been made, and our school committee has already certified the budget numbers you're about to look at. So any change going forward from here would truly be the school committee's purview and need to happen on the floor. And I know I'm speaking to the converted when I say that, but no one is adversarial. No one is blind to the facts. And no one is unwilling to do the work. We're all in this together and willing to work for it. And we look forward to that challenge and that work ahead. So, you know, again, I appreciate the points that are raised. They're very important, and we are very sensitive to that as a district. Thank you.
Either through you, Mr. Chairman, or Miss Chairman, I could speak.
Go ahead, Gary.
So, Ralph, I understand your point, and Dr. Hockey, I take yours to heart also. But as I look at the numbers, and I'm just looking whether we take the ESSER funds or not, our new growth is 668,000. Based on your budget, that's 80% of our new growth. And I'm glad you brought up the school because our buildings are in the same situation, and I can't sit idle and watch them fall apart. That's why I'm losing a building maintenance person to try to get through this budget. But if I look at these numbers, if my new growth was the same, following next year without any increase over the minimum, based on the numbers you're giving us, I'm going to be 50% of my new growth if it stays the same. And just like you, we're coming out of covert. And to decimate this town again, like we did in 2013, I can't do that. And I'm glad you brought up the partnership, because a partnership is both sides working together and not just throwing a number and I'm going to fight for what I want. Well, we're in the same boat. And to come up with the numbers that I see as attainable, we're not going to have a choice but to have the school committee and the schools fight hard and put it before the voters, because it's not sustainable for us. Not this year and not next year, and our growth will go backwards. So I think that as board members, finance committee members, and school committee members, along with the leadership of the school, I think, again, you can tell me that this is etched in stone, but I have to tell you, financially, we can't sustain this as a town. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, do you want us to proceed with the review of the certified budget at this time?
Yes, please. Absolutely. That's why you're here, please.
Oh, no, I just didn't want to, I didn't know if there was anything additional or if there was something more.
No. Time is getting late and we have other folks coming after you. I appreciate it if you could, continue on the presentation, please.
Excellent.
And we know that it's complex, so thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so if we go back to, if we go right to the last line where the expenditure total, you'll see that our proposed fiscal 22 operating budget is $27,244,672. That's an increase of $727,664 over the current year's budget, or 2.74%. So if the budget that we spend goes up 2.74%, so does the revenue to balance that budget. So now we go back to the top and we look at what we're going to receive from the state and what the governor has proposed to send us. So Chapter 70, $13,740,734. That's an increase of $45,480. We get the basic increase, which is a per pupil cost, and that's it. The overseer has made it clear that both communities are in a situation where the state is going to contribute less and less, and they're going to expect the community, both communities, to contribute more to get towards the target goal, target share of the budget. So we can't expect Chapter 70 to change going forward. Chapter 71 is our transportation reimbursement. That's something that only regional school districts receive. Our reimbursement is down $54,000 over what it is proposed for this year. Most of that is because, as you remember, we pretty much shut down operations in March, the middle of March last year. So our reimbursement is based on actual expenditures from the prior year. And since we were not running buses for 2.5 months or 3 months, we didn't spend all that money, so our reimbursement went down. And so it'll be $515,973 next year. We receive a reimbursement to offset the cost of charter school tuition. It's a sliding scale formula. So the first year that a student attends charter school, we pretty much get 100% of that tuition back in a reimbursement. And as the years go on over the next 3 or 4 years, it declines until it gets to zero. So I'm going to talk about charter school and school choice tuition a little bit when we get into the budget. But the current year, we're anticipated to receive $250,161 in charter school reimbursement. So our total revenue from the state is expected to be $14,506,868. That's a major increase of 0.24%. We get down to district revenue. And unlike the towns, we don't have the ability to raise much revenue, if no revenue. We do bill Medicaid for some medical services we provide to students. We are budgeting to receive $220,000 in the upcoming year. That's down $5,000 from this year. We're seeing a downward trend in reimbursement from the government. So we took $5,000 and reduced that estimate. Investment income, we increased investment income by $5,000. That's the investments that the treasurer makes with the district funds. So we're estimating $35,000 for next year. In the current fiscal year, fiscal 21, we had a technology project that will yield a E-rate reimbursement of $51,000, and we won't have that in next year's budget, so that's been removed. And then we are proposing, when we get to the budget, to contribute $400,000 to a stabilization account. We talked about that as part of our Siemens Energy project. We would put the $400,000 into the stabilization account, and then we would draw from that each year to offset the town's cost of the capital assessment associated with the payback of the energy improvements that we made. So we would fund the stabilization contribution using excess and deficiency funds from the district, which is similar to free cash for the town. And then lastly, we would take an additional $150,000 of excess and deficiency funds and use that to offset the current year's proposed capital assessment to the communities. So district revenue would be $805,000 even, and that's up about 4.5% over the current year. Then we get to the town assessment portion. And if we could flip to the next page in the presentation, it's kind of a detailed breakdown of how we calculate the assessment for each community. So I'll skip to the bottom. I'll go through Spencer since that's who we're meeting with. So the minimum contribution, the minimum required operating contribution is set by the state. That's part of the Chapter 70 formula. So you can see in that middle, that first highlighted column for fiscal 22, it's $7,409,310. So that's an increase of $211,968. So that's the amount that increases the amount that you could choose to use ESSER funds to reduce that assessment by. In addition to that, we're asking for $385,881 above and beyond your required minimum contribution to make the budget balance. So that totals to an operating assessment of $7,795,191. That's an increase of $579,652, or 8.03% over the current year. The next assessment would be transportation. So we take the cost of all of our transportation across the district, general education, special education, foster care, and homeless. We add that together and we deduct out what we estimated to be our transportation reimbursement, which was $515,000. And we come down to a net number, and then we apportion that based on the current October 1st enrollment for each town. So for Spencer, their portion of transportation would be $1,313,082. That's an increase of 8.95% over the current year. The debt assessment is the principal and interest payment due on the Wye Village Elementary School. There's about 4 years left on that loan. So for Spencer, East Brookfield doesn't have that assessment. Spencer would pay $197,331 for that debt assessment. And I believe that's also been approved as a debt exclusion, so it doesn't impact your Prop 2.5 levy limit. And then lastly, we have the capital assessment, which was new last year. That's the annual payment back to Siemens for the $4 million of energy projects that we had done throughout the district. Just a reminder, we replaced boilers in every school. We did lighting in every school, only partially at the high school because of the impending MSBA project. And we did some other work as well. So it's a 10-year payback. And Spencer's portion of that would be $330,923. And that's how we get to the total assessment for the town of Spencer of $9,636,527. That's an increase of 5.88% over the current year, or $535,135. Now, I just want to go across to those last few columns and talk about if the Board of Selectmen were to vote to reduce their minimum local contribution. So we would reduce their up above the operating minimum, would go down by the $210,244, and basically we take that money and we spend it on those positions that we talked about. So the budget gets reduced by an equal amount, and Spencer's assessment would then go down to $9,426,283, an increase of $324,891 over the current year, and it would be an increase of 3.57% rather than 5.88%. The next slide in the presentation just walks through how we calculate the percentages, the apportionment percentages that we use for each community. So we take the October 1st, 2020 enrollment, and I've got it broken down by, so we use the enrollment that the district is financially responsible for. So we're responsible to pay for those kids that go to charter school, that leave our district and go to charter schools, those students who leave our districts and go to other districts, that's school choice, as well as the students that are in district and attending our own schools. And included in that in-district number are about 42 or 40 students that we send out to other collaboratives and so forth, because we can't provide those services in district. So in total, the enrollment that we're using to calculate those percentages for this budget is 1,574 students, of which 305 belong to East Brookfield, 1,269 belong to Spencer, excuse me, and the percentages would be 80.62% of the budget would be apportioned to Spencer, and 19.38% would be apportioned to East Brookfield. And then down in the lower left-hand corner is just how we calculate that transportation assessment that we talked about on the previous page. It takes all our transportation costs, which total $2.144 million. We deduct out the anticipated reimbursement for transportation from the state, get down to a net budget of $1,628,000, and then we apportion it based on those percentages, and that's how we arrive at the charge to each community.
Madam Chair, just to inform you, Paul McLaughlin has joined us, so we do have a majority of the Finance Committee and have a quorum.
Thank you.
If we go to the next slide, it's just a presentation on calculation of capital assessment, and it's the same calculation as we've used last year. Last year was the first year. The only difference is there's been some timing differences with the way anticipated refunds or rebates have come in, so we had to make some adjustments in the E and D that we were applying. But basically, you can see on the top our total project costs for the work that was done, $4,036,040. We broke it down between East Brookfield Elementary, 100%.
This conference will now be recorded.
Sorry, that the organizer is experiencing technical difficulties, and this session might expire in 5 minutes, but then it went away. So just giving everybody a heads up. To reconnect, it's just exactly the same connection. If this goes away, we can just all link in again with the same connection.
Very good.
The 360 technology is ready with assist for added confidence.
Okay. The next slide is just a breakdown of the governor's budget, and you can see the Chapter 70 that he's anticipated providing to us in the governor's budget, charter tuition reimbursement, regional school transportation. It's in the right, furthest to the right, and then we also see school choice receiving tuition for students that come here from other schools, other districts. So that's $311,000. And then there's some estimated charges for special education assessment, small, $1,888. And the school choice sending tuition for students that leave our district and go elsewhere, $923,606. And here's the budget buster for us this year. Charter school sending tuition, $1,086,683. So I'd like to take a moment and just talk about school choice and charter. School choice, since I've been here in 2015, has really been the Achilles heel of the district. We've had more, up until about 2016, we had a continual rise of students leaving Spencer East Brookfield and attending other districts. And honestly, the top 5 districts that get our students, the number 1 is Tantascwa. So I think a lot of the East Brookfield students who want to attend a vocational program go there because East Brookfield does not belong to a vocational district. The second largest community where our students go is the town of Leicester. We had 36 students in Leicester. The third one is North Brookfield. We have 23 students going to North Brookfield, and then Quabbin and a virtual academy. So we have to ask ourselves, why would students be leaving Spencer East Brookfield and going to North Brookfield and Leicester. When you look at their scores, if you go to the DESI site and you look at their report card, they don't score any better. In fact, they may, in some cases, they score less than we do. So we can only believe that students are leaving here because of the experience, because of the high school, because of cuts we've made in the budget going back, or because of the cultural environment that's been here since the turmoil back in 2012 and 13. So I know as select boards, you've asked us to figure out a way to get those students back. I mean, clearly, if we could get half of those students back from school choice, that's a $450,000 increase in our revenue. Or it's a $450,000 decrease in what we'd have to pay to send students elsewhere. So it behooves us to find a way to invest in this budget and do the things that Dr. Hahi has talked about so that we can try to get these kids back and keep them here and stop sending our Chapter 70 money to towns like East Brookfield, not East Brookfield, to Leicester and North Brookfield, where they're not getting any better of an education than they would be had they stayed. On top of that, we've got a real problem with the old Sturbridge Village Charter School that opened in 2018, I believe. So prior to that, we had about 8 kids that were attending charter school, and they were attending the Abby Kelly Foster Charter School, or whatever the name is in Worcester. We had 8 kids, 2016, 2017. In 2018, when Old Sturbridge Village opened up, we had 39 students go there. In 2019, that went up to 45 students. 2020, 53 students. In the current year, we have 66 students going to the charter school in Sturbridge. And for the budget in fiscal 22, what the governor based our charter school tuition on, it's approximately 74 students going to that charter school. We have to find a way to keep those students here. And they're all early grades, right? They're all elementary school because that's all that they have right now. And they continue to add a grade a year. And honestly, I'm not so sure that their scores are much better than our scores. So we got to ask ourselves, why are those kids leaving? And what can we do to keep them here? I don't have the answer to that, but I think it's the experience. I think it's the rigor of the education. It's the preparation of the early childhood student so that they're prepared when they get to 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, so they can do math, they can do science, they have proper literacy skills. It's truly an investment, as Dr. Hahi said, and we are trying to get this budget to a place where these numbers will turn around. But we can't do it without making that investment in staff, in training, and early intervention services that these students need, because we're losing the good kids, and it's costing the district dearly. So our charter school tuition is going to be about 1.1 million in fiscal 22. It was about 850,000. It's about 850,000 in the current year. So we've got a problem that we've got to address head on, and we've got to do it as in a collaborative manner between both boards of selectmen and the school district. And Dr. Hahi and the administrative team put together a pretty good plan to begin to stem the tide on this. But we all have to come together, and we have to realize that it truly is an investment, and it's not going to pay off in 6 months. It's something we need to do and be consistent with to try to prepare these students and put together a program that'll keep students here and maybe get students back that have left.
So, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, if I may jump in.
Certainly.
To the points raised by Mr. Suter, we've run a process to this point based on certain assumptions. I'm going to highlight a couple of key pieces and then wrap up if it's okay. But for the school district, we have some issues and concerns, as Mr. Suter mentioned, that we need to meet head on. Obviously, assumptions can change. One example earlier in the budget process was health insurance. We had anticipated seeing a health insurance increase between 5 and 10%. We were very fortunate this year to experience for a second year in a row, no increase, 0. That's unprecedented. And it's a credit again to our faculty and staff and everyone inside the district who has been very mindful in their healthcare throughout the pandemic so that we could realize a 0% increase in health insurance. That translated into a $190,000 savings, which was immediately applied to this budget in a reduction for the assessments and the overall operation. Again, huge success, but it's something we don't talk about until meetings like this. How we end FY21 this school year is so important. It will set the table for how we are able to meet our budget requirements, not only right here, right now, but how we will be able to engage in FY22, 23, and 24. How we finish this year is paramount because it will permit us or not to rebalance all the lines of our budget and set a stage that hopefully will give not only Spencer, not only East Brookfield, but this region what it needs going forward. We are being very strategic and very thoughtful in our work. Unfortunately, one of the major issues and concerns that we have no control over, like I mentioned above, health insurance, when I said assumptions, well, special education costs. They become less volatile after April 1st in the April 1st move-in law. But by putting in programs and services now, we have an opportunity to keep the students in the district saving tuition and transportation. By putting things in now, we have an opportunity to continue to stabilize our needs so that whether it's FY22, 23, and beyond, we'll be able to easily forecast for you and all stakeholders. And I think that, if I heard Mr. Woodbury correctly earlier, is something that is very important. And I'm sure Mr. Woodbury is not alone. We share that concern. The governor's budget provided us with a snapshot or a clearer picture, but obviously not exactly what we're looking for. So knowing our budget before June 30th, as early in the calendar as possible, gives us as a Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District the resources we need to plan effectively, meet the needs, and not have to go through non-renewals and layoffs and liability protections and the like, so that not just the two towns, but the district wins. Everybody wins. I do not have any interest, nor does the committee, and I'm sure you, have any interest in a prolonged budget. So it behooves us, as Mr. Suter mentioned earlier, to put our budget to bed as early as possible in the calendar year so we can really get the staffing the way it needs to be now, next year, and the year after. Our team
Mr. Chairman.
Tirelessly at this.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Gary, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. Maybe Gary or Dr. Hahi could answer. So, how many paras are you hiring?
So we've already hired them. They're already in the current budget, and we had to hire them because of the pandemic to support the teachers.
Okay, so how many of those are there, Gary? Because I think, so you have the paras, you have the sped teacher, and a counselor. Is that all the new positions?
In the budget, yeah. The counselor is new. The counselor was supposed to be put in last year, and because of the financial crisis, we took it out.
In the budget, Gary, come on, in the budget? I mean, are there any other new positions that are going to be in place next year that aren't there now? That's what the gentleman wants to know.
Yes.
Yeah, there are some, but they're not all in the budget.
We know what they are, please.
So what are they?
A budget hearing. We need to know about things like that. Thank you.
But they're not in the budget.
So I can answer
But
that.
they will be.
Happy to answer it. So preschool, severe special needs, counselor 1.0 at Knox Trail, home language teacher at Knox Trail 1.0, special ed teacher at War Village 1.0 FTE, director of early education and care looking after our young people, going out and engaging the community and working on NIAC accreditation and working on grant solicitation. None of these positions are in the budget, but they are FTEs that we are going to reallocate the current funds to use, target, and get after. And lastly, right now, because we've operated with fewer hires, we have an opportunity to reallocate a current FTE in this year's budget for a team chair, so we can put that person in right now.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, sir. Happy to answer it. But I didn't realize that was what you were looking for. So I'm sorry. I'm trying to make you what you need, but we are going to use the federal money for this purpose.
I think my board's concerned, and I think the finance committee's concerned too. All right.
Yep.
And you know, it's great you're able to put those positions, you know, in there, and you were able to put the paras in earlier. I don't know how many there were, but obviously several.
No.
But when we're doing this 2 years from now for FY24, all right, those positions, okay, if they're going to remain, and you made a statement that kind of indicated that a few moments ago, the towns are going to have to pick up. And that's I think that's the board's concern.
Yes.
And once you know, it's like anything else. Once you get something, you don't want to give it up.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. And so
once that's something that's very definitive with a goal that you know is going to be reached within a year or two, those are going to be back and haunt us. And at that point in time, you know, we're going to have a situation where, you know, we'll be forced with cutting town employees, which we cannot do any longer. That was done in 2013. It's not going to happen again. Or then we talk about the big O word that nobody wants to talk about. And I agree with you, what you said earlier, Dr. Hardy, that if there ever is an override, that it needs to be not just for the district, but townwide as well. We certainly have a lot of needs that we need for different reasons than you. And nobody cares more about kids than me. And I know it's been a very tough time for all of you, for your administrators, your teachers, everybody that works in the schools. Been a very tough time, but a tough time on the kids and the parents. I know that. Right. But that's my concern, is what's going to happen when we're meeting 2 years from now to talk about FY24. And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but if we don't see right now what's there, okay, and what may occur in 2 years, I don't want to come back and have to say, well, gee, we wish we knew that 2 years ago. Yeah. I mean, there's a modicum of preparation we can do for that. Not much, because 2.5 holds us back. You know that.
Yes, excellent point.
We need to be prepared. That's my point. Thank you.
So to that, if I may, Mr. Chair, to those points that you're raising, couldn't agree more. And what I would say to that is very basic, and I think it's kind of speaking to what Mr. Suter was trying to communicate in his presentation while he walked through the numbers. We can invest a little bit at a time now in baby steps, or try to do it all in one big swing. And I don't recommend the big swing. I recommend the baby steps. So with what we have, we're trying to reallocate, redistribute resource to targeted and purposeful areas, number one, with what we have current. Get ahead of it, especially coming out of the pandemic. And SEL, trauma, counselors, therapists, special education just seems to be front and center. So that's why you're seeing those positions happening.
I get it. I get it. Thank you. We still have concerns.
What I would say,
additionally, they're good to have. No, you need them. I'm not going to argue with you on that.
If we do our job well, to your point, and we are collaborative and working together, I see no reason, if we have success, we couldn't find ways to absorb that, or, you know, make adjustments and, you know, for lack of a better word, tweak to our budget internal to our operation so that we become more effective and efficient. You know,
If you keep everything, Dr. Hardy, that tweaks about $400,000 by very rough math, very rough math. And you heard Gary say earlier how much we have in new revenue. It's just under $700,000.
Correct.
Right? And you're already getting a good chunk of that. And you know, you can't realistically expect to have it all, and you can't realistically expect us to go beyond that. And that's what I think Gary's getting at. And I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad there's some transparency here because it was needed. And I'm glad that it's out there. And you're going to do what you want to do. Nobody knows more what power a regional school superintendent has, a regional school committee, than Ralph Hicks, who spent 15 years on the school committee, our regional school committee, and 11 years as a regional superintendent, and other years as a regional employee, as a special ed director, and counselor, et cetera, et cetera. So I certainly understand that, but somewhere down the line, if you want it to be paid, that has to be dealt with. And everything that you have there, I can tell you right now, without an override, it won't occur. And you have another 800-pound gorilla in the room that you know about and I know about that's going to be coming up in the next year or two, that is desperately, desperately needed to give the kids at the high school a decent education, and to encourage parents of sixth graders going to seventh grade and eighth graders going to ninth not to put their kids into Tantascwa, because I hate to question or what Gary said, but a lot of them are vocational, but also a lot of them are also kids who are going to get an academic track, who are going to turn around and they go in seventh grade, because at Tantascwa, by the time they get to go into ninth grade, they're pretty full. So this happened the last year I was superintendent. It started. We had someone in the district who wanted their child to go there and wanted to have the child's friends go with them, and they recruited a number of students from East Brookfield to go. It took out about half the sixth grade class. Instead of going to Knox, they went down to Tantascwa, and Tantascwa was a wonderful district. And I understand, why that parent did that, but that's gone on throughout the years. And you got the charter school that Gary aptly mentioned is a real money sucker. 74 kids, OMG. If I'm not mistaken, at the third or fourth year, that's $10,000 a kid or more you're going to have taken off of your Chapter 70 sheet. All right? I don't know how the Commonwealth of Massachusetts expects school districts that are struggling to survive when they give you a paltry $45,000 increase in Chapter 70 and then take away $1 million or more on charter and school choice. So you've got a daunting task. I certainly recognize it, and I will certainly help you any way that we can within our means. And beyond that, it's going to have to be a real group effort. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I could just finish,
I'm sorry,
and I apologize.
I'm sorry.
But that was my whole point, because as I add up the numbers, that's another $400,000 swing on top of whatever. And there's no way that this is going to be sustainable. So we need to figure this out on how we're going to survive this, because it'd be nice to have a wonderful school and kids coming back, but it would be horrible in the dead of the winter when you don't have a highway department. I mean, I know that sounds out of the realm, but it really isn't when I start adding up these numbers. So we need to find a solution. And if it is to put it in front of the voters, that may be what has to happen, because in 2 years from now, when those positions hit, if they stay in course and we're faced with 3 years, 400,000, and again, the renovation or the build of the school, I think we all want to push to the same goal line. I think some of us want to get a touchdown, and some of us are happy with getting a first down. I guess that's an analogy I'll use for tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak. I appreciate it. And thank you, Dr. Hahi and Gary, for your information tonight. Thank you.
I want to just impress upon you folks that, from my opinion, we, you do need to improve your district, and I understand why you're doing what you're doing. And, but it's like turning an aircraft carrier around at sea. It's going to be a very slow process. And I have no doubt it can happen. And the question, and if you get the kids back, the Chapter 70 money is going to go up, and it's possible assessments could actually go down. If you brought all those kids back today, which isn't going to happen, your assessment will go down dramatically because you get all that Chapter 70 money back. It's going to Sturbridge, going to Leicester, North Brookfield, and Tantascwa, and other places. There's going to be a long, drawn-out process. I think it's good you're talking about it tonight. You're telling us what you're doing. And I think you need to continue to let the public know what you're doing. And I'm sure you will, to sell the school district, that the school district is on the move, et cetera. And try and stop the hemorrhaging, at least, of kids going out, and try to bring a handful back if you can. It's very hard to bring them back, but you can stop the hemorrhaging, and that, believe it or not, is a step in the right direction and would reap a lot of benefit, in my humble opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you, Dr. Hagi and Mr. Suter and everybody else. You want to wrap up your budget, folks?
May we conclude?
Yes, go right ahead.
So in terms of Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District and where do we go from here? The issues and concerns, we share what's been said on the call this evening. We hear you, and we're partners in this process. I can't say it any other way. My job is to recommend and advocate for children and the educational programs and services that are needed. Under this administration, since my arrival in July of 18, the district has created a 3-year district education and finance plan that has been reviewed, vetted, and voted by our committee and given to both towns. We have created and submitted and worked up our infrastructure needs prior to my arrival and put together a capital plan that also was turned over to both communities. We have drafted a preliminary budget that has been certified and voted by our committee at present with what is known. That's not to say things can't change, but unfortunately, until I have better knowns, I can't drop the number. Regional school finance doesn't allow for that, as you know. It is our intention moving forward, going from here, that we meet with both boards of selectmen, meet with the finance committees, continue to look deeply and meaningfully in partnership with you, and keep our eyes on, as I mentioned, the 3-year district education and finance plan, the capital plan, infrastructure needs highlighted by our high school project. Collaboration, ladies and gentlemen, is critical to our success. And we're not asking for everything. We're asking for you to partner with us, invest with us, even nominally, so that we can get our students what they need. And the collaboration and partnership right here, right now on this call, and whether we can secure a budget early in this process as opposed to a prolonged budget process, is important to everyone, not just the district, to everyone. It benefits everybody. As I mentioned earlier, it gives us the opportunity to basically control non-renewals and layoffs and protect liabilities. It gives us the ability to stabilize our needs now in this year and set and forecast for the next 2 to 3, while also utilizing the federal funds as intended. The federal funds are expected to fill this gap that exists currently for the municipalities. It's not to say it can do it all. So we're very mindful of what you're saying. The last point I will add is our Commonwealth has a role to play. And it is incumbent on us collectively, not the regional district and the 2 towns, but us together, to advocate to our legislators emphatically to invest the same way. You can't say education is important and not put the money where it's needed. And unfortunately, looking at the first pass of the governor's budget, he's saying all the right things, but the money's not following the words. It's important that we advocate together. And that is to our state officials, because the problem just isn't ours. If they had their way, as Mr. Suter mentioned earlier, they continue to put more on the minimum locals, which is us at the local level. And as somebody who has served on a board of selectmen and the finance committee on more than one occasion, I can tell you I appreciate your positions greatly. You're not going to find a better collaborative person and partner in this game than me. I've been where you are, and I hear you loud and clear. But my role is to advocate, and I'm going to do that as best I can as your superintendent, with our leadership team members and our governance team. But we need you to partner with us in that advocacy to our state officials. And again, I can't thank you enough for adjusting your sales. When I tell you we're getting up at 6 a.m. and working till all hours of the night, sometimes 6 days a week or more, that's not an exaggeration. That's not an exaggeration. Faculty, staff, and administration are putting in very, very long hours throughout the entire pandemic. And with the kids coming back, we're excited, but we're also needing your help and your support. So please stay with us, continue to partner and support us, and know that you have a partner and support with us as stewards. We're public servants, and we'll do our part. And thank you again very much for this evening and the time. Deeply, deeply appreciated, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Hardy, Mr. Suter.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions? Board members, finance committee members?
So I have a couple of comments, and then if anyone else has questions, and I do have one question. First of all, I just want to, Dr. Hardy alluded to it a couple of moments ago. The minimum local contribution required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for us this year is up 2.95% over last year. Yet we are only allowed to raise our taxes 2.5%. Just do the math. I'm just laying that out there for you. So the ESSER money would allow us to reduce that for this year, and that's fine. But that is never going away. That's the state telling us. So I just want everybody to be cognizant of that. There are other issues involved, but just as a point, 2.95 instruction from the state to raise our contribution to the schools, and we are only allowed to raise 2.5 in taxes. The other thing is, I do have one question for Dr. Hahi, and that is in terms of the charter school, folks going out to charter and to others under school choice. Do you do exit interviews or surveys? Do you ask them why they're leaving? And if you do, what have you found out that could help you to bring them back?
I'll need to research that. I know we have done surveys ad nauseum throughout the pandemic, but I need to drill into that a little bit, Chairwoman Brainy, to be fair. It's been more casual conversation at the time of transition via phone than anything formalized, but I can research that and try and get you some data.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because we've all had casual conversations, and I think, you know, some of the things Ralph said, and we've all talked to people. We know why certain people send their kids for very specific reasons, and others not necessarily so much. So thank you. Finance committee members, other questions or comments? All right.
Madam Chair, if no one else, I will, once everyone else has had their say.
Okay, any, yep, so Finance, Board of Selectmen, we do appreciate your time. Mr. Shemeth.
So, Dr. Hahi, first, let me indicate that the community fully supports, and I myself have said so on multiple occasions in public, the great efforts put on by your school district staff to meet the needs of our students in these extraordinarily challenging times, and the risks that each one of your staff puts themselves through each and every day, and the concern and the loss of sleep at night. I get it. I work in education as well, and we greatly appreciate the sacrifice. Don't think that we don't. Secondly, I too come at this with a great wealth of experience, having been chairman of the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School Committee, chairman of the Spencer Board of Selectmen, and now as town moderator, a ex officio member of the Finance Committee. So I appreciate all the angles, as do you. So we need to just recognize some realities. I appreciate that you're putting forth what you think the students need. That's what you're expected to do. The reality is also that no one is going to vote for an override in the middle of a pandemic. The fact is that people are unemployed through no fault of their own. Small businesses are struggling, and some haven't been able to be open again because of the pandemic, no fault of their own. You have to protect the public health, and it's going to take a year or two for that to turn around. So the reality is that we need to recognize that, yes, the kids are suffering, but so are their parents and trying to pay the bills. So aren't the small business owners, and that's just a reality everywhere, not just Spencer East Brookfield. Secondly, one of the major reasons that you yourself had said in prior years that we are losing kids is because we need to upgrade the facilities at the high school. And given how strict that process is, we're going to get one shot at that. If we put an override on before we get the vote to approve the debt exclusion, then we risk our one shot at fixing the high school, and we may not get another one for another 25 years. We just can't take that chance. So we need to recognize those two realities. From what Mary has told us, it's a pretty good chance that the debt exclusion for the high school might be in the next fiscal year sometime or the one thereafter. We need to make sure that goes through before we can even entertain the thought of an override, and it's going to take 2 years at least for the economy to come back. So in the meantime, we need to work together, think outside the box, as I know you have been doing, to bridge the gap. So people in Spencer are going to best respond to phasing in the cost of the special education teachers that this ESSER money would pay for if we relate it in their minds to how Spencer prepared for the firefighters. Tom and his predecessors took great pains in working with the select board and the finance committee to phase in over time and adding capacity here and there and doing other things so that the firefighters those four full-time firefighters could come on board, in that we can actually absorb them in the budget without having to go to the voters for an override question. I would suggest to you that you need to work with Tom and the select board to adopt a similar messaging to the town of Spencer. That is your best chance for success and our students' best chance for success. And that's what we're all here for. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shemeth. Anyone else have any final comments?
Madam Chair, if I could, this is Gary Suter.
Oh, Gary, sure.
So
you're hiding in the corner.
Yeah, right. The only thing I just would reply to Mr. Shemeth is that we're not looking for an override. I don't know how that worked its way into the conversation, but that's not anything, as Dr. Hahi said, that we would ever do without consultation with the town, and that's not our intent. Never was. It was never discussed at a school committee meeting, and we're just trying to advocate for our budget. So we don't want it to be misconstrued out there on the street that the school district is looking for an override. We are not. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
Mary, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to give that impression, but I just mentioned that the only way, if all of those positions stayed in the budget in FY24, the only way I could see us being able to do that without serious layoffs in the town at time would be an override. Now, there are things we may be able to do to mitigate some of that. I don't think all of it, but some of it. And certainly the reference that was made a few moments ago about what Mr. Gregory and the board did in order to accommodate the 4 full-time firefighters is there. But that, basically, we use solar money for that, and then coming in. But it's going to start to dry up because I think Spencer's pretty well covered with solar arrays. So I do apologize if I gave that impression. I'm sorry.
And I just also want to remind everyone that FMPC is working to, there's a survey up on the town website. Shortly, we will have it in print and you'll find it in the leader. And we'll have it in print by town meeting, that you can express, you recognize what, we recognize, or in the survey, identify the needs of the town and ask the citizens to indicate methods which they would find acceptable to accommodate and pay for those things. So it's a work in progress to try and reel all these different things in, because we do have to come up with a comprehensive financial plan to take care of everyone. And we have to recognize the reality that there's a lot of work to be done because we have the same conversations every single year. So, we can't avoid the word override, but I agree 100%. No one, neither the school committee nor anyone on the Board of Selectmen or Finance Committee is suggesting it. I think it's just simply recognizing one method of addressing the problems, but within the next few months, I hope that we have a clearer path based on the work that FMPC is doing. If that
Madam Chair.
Tony.
Hi. Again, I think we're talking about a lot of semantics here. It's all about our capacity to pay. If our capacity is not there in 2 years, it doesn't matter who's asking for the override. It's an override request. And I will honestly tell the citizens of Spencer why we're getting that override. Now, I am all for, and I'll be the first person in line to work collaboratively, but we're just using semantics here. This is why it's being mentioned. And hopefully FMPC will come up with an appropriate ask that include everybody at the table to get us through the next few years in the future. But we are talking semantics. I don't think we can ignore the fact that in 2 years we may have to ask. So thank you.
Right. Thanks, Tony. Anyone else?
One last comment, Madam Chairman, if I could. I want to thank
Gary.
Dr. Hahi and the school committee because they are doing their job to advocate for what they need. I also want to state tonight is I don't think we should close the door on it. I think there's still some work to be done here. And as you know, I sit on the FMPC also, and we know that we're limited on what our capabilities are based on 2.5. But I want to be clear that is whatever was presented tonight is again. I think that we need to have open dialogue and keep that open dialogue going because, again, the numbers aren't sustainable for us. Because we struggle and give up 80% of our new growth. Yep. But is that going to benefit the town? So I do appreciate the fact that Dr. Hahi said this is a collaborate. This is a working together. And hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we can do that and keep that door open. So thank you.
All right. Absolutely.
Madam Chair, one more clarification, please.
Yep.
Oh, come on. So, just to be clear, the article in the budget that the school district and school committee presents is the scope of action you can take. The motion that the school committee chooses to put on the floor may end up being lower than that, but for the public's information, it can't be higher than what the school committee presented this evening.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
All right. Good point of clarification. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, with that being said, thank you so much, Dr. Hahi and Mr. Suter, for your presentations. It's clear that you've put a great deal of thought into them, and thank you for all the committee members on both sides for your input as well. And with that, you're more than welcome to stay, or we'll move on to the town clerk. Lisa Johnson, welcome, Lisa. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you're enjoying your stay here in town.
Yes, ma'am. I am. Thank you very much.
So your budget is up on the screen now.
Okay.
And if you'd like to, are there any highlights? It seems that it's fairly straightforward. Are there any highlights that you'd like to bring to our attention?
I don't think so. Thank you. We tried to keep it level funded, except for the elections that can go down a bit because there is no major elections this year, just the town.
Mm-hmm.
And police detail did go up a little bit, but we think that with the number we're going to stick with is fine for this year. Training for poll workers could resume, but we're not sure on that, so we left them where they were also. I can't think of anything else really I should say, unless you have questions. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Johnson, our town clerk?
Madam Chair, when no one else does.
Okay, go ahead, Bill.
So first, Lisa, thank you again for your stepping in and doing an outstanding job during these extremely extraordinary times and running the number of elections that you have already. First question is in regards to the record preservation line. And it's not to look to increase it at the moment, but whether in your brief time in the office, whether you have any sense of whether there might be an increased need to spend in that line item in the future in order to preserve more of our records, because once they're gone, they're gone. And then secondly, since there's a lot of public listening, and I know, and I mentioned this at the select board meeting last night, the state law has been extended to allow the precautions and extended voting opportunities that you were able to offer voters in September and November can now be offered for the annual town election. So if you could just very briefly indicate how the annual town election will work and if you're going to use any of those.
Yes, sir. Records preservation, I'm assuming you mean binding up of all the files we have here in town?
Yes, and whatever you need to do to save them.
All right. There are many books that can be bound up properly outside services. I'm not sure who your town uses, but we can look into that. But that's always going to be there because you're getting more and more vital records every day. So that's an ongoing thing. As far as your elections, we did get permission, as you know, to have mail-in ballots sent to anybody who wants them. Our incident plan, we're going to stick with the one that we had since June of 2020 with the preparations of people's, where to stand, who tells you where to go. It worked very well. Bryn and I don't see a need to change it right now. Is that it?
So when will people be able to request mail-in ballots?
They can now. Anytime we have the absentee ones, I have not gotten the new ones yet, but I can look by Monday and see if they've come in from the state on the computer. But there's no restriction as to whether you're truly an absentee voter or not.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you very much. Any additional questions? I know that the having the mail-in voting was very helpful last year. In the early voting, everything went very smoothly. So
yes, ma'am, it did.
It did. Well, thank you very much for spending the time and waiting so patiently for your turn. We really appreciate hearing from you. And with that, we can move on to.
Excuse me, Mary.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mary, I want to thank Lisa too. I think she came in at a very rough time. She's done an extraordinary job. And I want to take this opportunity in front of you folks to say that I know I and the board greatly appreciate having her as our town clerk. And I wish her nothing but the absolute best in the future. So thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. I am going to miss you all here. The staff here is wonderful to work with. Everybody knows what they need to do and questions are asked if needed, but I truly enjoyed my time here. Thank you very much, all.
That's good. Thank you very much. And I will say, having worked at the polls, it was incredibly, everything was incredibly well run. So thank you very much for your time. And we'll still see you at the town election, though.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Next up is Rebecca Foran, the treasurer and collector. Welcome. Are you there?
She was there
Rebecca?
for most of the meeting.
Her initials are there, and she's still listed as a.
Perhaps Rebecca, you might be muted. You might be muted. You might have to unmute yourself. Yeah, I see her initials. Yeah, I see you there.
It doesn't appear to be muted, Madam Chairman.
No.
From what I can see.
No, well, yeah, I can't see. I can see her initials. So, Rebecca, are you there?
Perhaps we let Linda LeBlanc give her presentation and come back.
Good idea.
Wait for a moment. That happens.
Yep, that's fine. Linda, are you there?
Yes.
I see your initials as well. Hello, welcome. So,
yep, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you also for participating. Do you have some highlights for us?
Yeah, just going over the general expenses for you. The vision software maintenance, just their increased cost was from $6,496 to $7,146 for an increase of $650. And then the cloud hosting, which is also through Vision, increased from $3,245 to $3,374 for an increase of $89. And I switched $50 from the mileage to the printing, which we needed for door tags. And I added a miscellaneous expense of $450, which is what we need for it's a file that Vision Government Solution is providing, which turns our property cards into PDFs in order to update our online property record cards yearly. And other than that, not much has changed. I went down a little in the personal property because I found a different vendor, but that's about it. Then the only thing is the reval, which is going to be a separate thing, which went through the. It used to be a capital expense, but they want to handle it a different way. So, other than that, you know.
Okay. So it's pretty much ordinary, nothing unusual.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Yeah.
Now, do you do? I'm sorry. The reval, is that a rolling initiative that you do a certain portion every year, or do you have to do it all at the same time?
Yeah, it used to be in the regular account, but it was a 3-year thing. And then it got changed to now we're doing a 5-year reval, and you can't keep on encumbering the money. So instead of trying to raise it all in 1 year, we spread it out. But if it goes into the regular budget, it can't stay for 5 years. So
Madam Chair, I can provide some insight on this. So the revaluation funding has been handled through the capital appropriation It's obviously not a capital project, but the mechanism that allowed basically allowed for those funds to be put into a standalone account. So they exist across fiscal years so that Linda can access those funds as needed over multiple years. I spoke with Allison Lawrence about this, and she's proposed creating a revolving account within the general fund so that it would be a new account. We would be putting this money that Linda needs each year, 20 to 25,000 each year, into this general fund revolving account that would not close out to free cash at the end of the fiscal year, but would stay on account across fiscal years in the same manner that a capital account would. So we've taken the revaluation out of the capital program for the obvious reason that it's not a capital project. And we're going to move this money into a general fund revolving account so that those funds will stay on account year after year and not get closed out to free cash. That was the obstacle that Linda was describing a moment ago. I hope that provides some clarity.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Any other questions or comments from the board? In that case, thank you very much, Linda. Appreciate that.
All right.
Appreciate your contribution. And so I've had a text that Rebecca Foran has been trying to speak to us, and her computer is not complying. So I texted back, suggested that she call. Oh, all right. Rebecca, are you on the phone now?
I am.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
I know I had trouble myself earlier, so I don't know. Technology is wonderful until it's not, as I've said about 8 times tonight. So,
right.
So welcome. Thank you very much for coming in and listening. And do you have something that you'd like to highlight for us?
I really don't. My budget has pretty much stayed the same throughout the last few years, so we haven't had to increase it for anything. So I don't really have anything to highlight on that.
Okay, thanks. Does anyone on the board or Board of Selectmen or Finance Committee, or does anyone have any questions for Rebecca, the Treasurer Collector? Well, with that, I'm sorry. What was that? You all set? Okay, great.
We're all set. I mean, she's
Excellent.
not asking for an increase, and the superintendent from Bay Path and his business manager have been very patient. So thank you, Rebecca. We're sorry it took so long.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No worries.
All right.
Have a great night.
Thanks.
You too.
All right. And now I'd like to welcome the Bay Path contingent. We have a new superintendent director, Mr. Kyle J. Brenner. Welcome, sir. I hope you're enjoying your first year at Bay Path. And then, of course, we have Dean Akabuchi, who is a familiar face. I think I saw, did I see one of your school? Oh, yeah, Bob Zukowski, there you are, one of your school committee members as well. So welcome. I apologize for the delay. I think we tried to have you at 7:30 and it's a little bit later than that, but we know that unfortunately the school budgets generate a great deal of conversation in town. So we have up on the screen the document that you sent us earlier. Everyone in the on the Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen have received copies of it as well, so soft copies. So with that, welcome and please tell us what you'd like to say.
Sure. First, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, board members, and FinCom members. And also, I do want to recognize, as you did, Robert Zukowski, who's on, and Jesselyn Gauscher, the school committee members from Spencer. So this budget was developed based on the assumption that the school will resume 100% in-person learning, and that many of the health and safety measures will remain in place next year to mitigate the viral transmission. Additionally, the budget will maintain the core values of providing our students with high-quality academic and technical education. The proposal continues our efforts to address not only our students' academic and vocational needs, but also their social and emotional well-being. We're committed to our mission, as well as maintaining our fiscal responsibilities to our member towns, especially during these difficult financial times. At this time, I'll turn it over to our business manager, Mr. Dean Icabucci, to go through the budget proposal.
Thank you, Kyle. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. And good evening. Welcome back for another fun year. I'm going to try and be very respectful of both boards' time because it is getting late, and I know you've been at this for quite a while. So I'm really going to try to go through and hit just the points that are really important. If there's anything that I've glossed over that you want to know more about, please stop me. I'll explain it and answer any questions. But I'm just going to really try to move through and highlight what we think is important. Moving on to slide number 2. Our Chapter 70 funding is a $327,020 increase over the current year's funding. The proposed Chapter 71 aid or transportation aid is a $309,051 decrease over current funding. And as you're aware, these numbers are based on the governor's numbers, and they're likely to change as the budget moves through the state legislature. On slide number 3, it shows you how this shakes out for the district, for BayPAP. Our required net school spending increased by $1,215,935, and that's being funded by the increase in Chapter 70 funding of $327,020 and the collective increase of our 10 towns minimum local contributions of $888,915. Moving to page 4, I want to emphasize that our operational budget does not require funds above minimum contributions by our member communities, and those assessments total $11,745,288. And again, that is at the minimum. Moving to slide number 5, it's very important to illustrate that even though our assessments are at the state minimum, the local contributions of our 10 towns collectively have increased by $888,915. And we're trying to stress that at every chance we get, because sometimes locally we get a little criticism as to why aren't we asking for more. And it's important for the people who are asking those questions to realize that even though we're at our minimum amounts, the towns are still providing us with almost $900,000 more in funding. Below that, you'll see our member town transportation assessments have been reduced by $300,000, and that's reflecting the use of our regional transportation reimbursement fund. As you may recall, last year in June, the school committee voted to establish this transportation fund, which allows us to transfer surplus revenue into this account to fund transportation expenses for the coming year. And by statute, those funds have to be used in that year. They can only stay on the books for 1 year, otherwise we have to close them out to E&D. And our school committee's pretty much made a commitment that since these are funds that were given to us to fund transportation, they should be used to fund transportation. Now, I'm sure you'll all recall that in years when we've received additional transportation funding, we've returned those funds to you and lowered your assessment. This is a little cleaner mechanism because now instead of having a whole process of lowering assessments, we can take those appropriations, move them into the transportation reimbursement fund, and then do exactly that of lowering your transportation assessment, but in the coming year. This year, we've lowered your assessments by $425,000. We, as you know, in the middle of March, school came to an abrupt halt. We had the funding and appropriations for transportation, but we didn't see the expense. So what we did is we took the surplus appropriations, which totaled approximately $425,000, put them into the transportation fund, and that's reducing your assessment this year. Next year, we believe we will have $300,000 of surplus revenue this year that we can move into the transportation fund and then lower your assessment. And you'll see how that works out in a minute. On page 6, we still are paying a sewer betterment tie-in fee to the town of Charlton of $30,750. I believe next year will be the last year for that. We are recommending that the school committee appropriate $50,000 from excess and deficiency to continue funding our OPEB liability. And we've also asked that the school committee reserve $150,000 of excess and deficiency funds through the budget process for any unknown and unbudgeted COVID-related expenses. So although we are putting these types of, or this funding into our budget, it has no impact on any of our towns because there's an estimated expense of $150,000 and the offset is the transfer from our free cash. So it has no impact on any of our towns. On page 7, you can see how our budget comes together. We have an operational budget which totals $21,400,464. That's made up of our Chapter 70 funding. We do receive a school choice assessment, which comes right off of our Chapter 70 funding of $197,697. We have our total of our assessed minimum local contributions from our 10 towns of $9,827,933. The $50,000 E&D transfer for OPEB, and the $150,000 transfer from E&D for any unbudgeted COVID expenses, totaling the $21,400,464. Below that, you see our transportation budget. The estimated cost for transportation next year is $1,521,541. It's offset or reduced by the Chapter 70 funding of $899,039. Below that, you see it's offset by a transfer or by payment from the Transportation Reimbursement Fund of $300,000. That leaves $322,502 to be assessed to our towns. And again, if we didn't have this Transportation Reimbursement Fund, we would be assessing our towns $622,000 versus $322,000. Below that, you see the debt service for our building project, which we wrapped up 5 years ago. That amount is $1,564,103. We have the capital assessment to the town of Charlton of $30,750, making our total budget $24,516,858. And that's our total budget for assessments. When we factor back in the school choice expense, our total operating budget, when we're including school choice, is $24,714,555. So what's in the budget? We believe we've adequately provisioned all of our academic classes in our shops. We've included funds for new textbooks for social studies and for the vet tech science program, which we will be starting in the fall. You may recall that it was our intention to start that this year, but all that got put on hold in March when the pandemic hit. So we're anticipating to start that program in September. We've already hired the teacher for that position. She's working on the curriculum now. So we're looking forward to that new program coming in. We've included funds in the budget to purchase some equipment for our advanced manufacturing program and to start purchasing equipment for the vet tech program. Again, we've added funds to fund the teacher in that program. We've also included funds to add one history teacher to address class sizes. We've included funds to restore a vocational job site coordinator. And when I say we're voting to, or we're restoring this position, it's a position we had in the budget at the end of last school year. The gentleman who held that position resigned to take a position in another district. With the shutdown and the hybrid model that we were going with, it didn't make sense to fill that position. So we didn't fill that this current year, but next year we're assuming that we'll be back in full force and we'll need that position. Just so you know, at any point in time, when we're back to a normal year, we have in excess of 150 students out on job sites. Those students need to be checked up upon at the job site, as well as the managers and the supervisors of those students need to be questioned and checked on. It's just too much for any existing staff to do it, and that's why we have that position. And we've also included funding to provide wage increases for all of our union and non-union staff. We've included a small amount of funding in the event we need to continue with online learning, and it appears that we may have to do that as the state now in all of their indications is that they want everybody back full in person, but they'll allow an option to stay full remote. So we need to have some funds reserved to cover those expenses. We also included funds to implement the Student Opportunity Act. That increases our Chapter 70 funding. That act was to go into effect this year, but it got postponed because of the pandemic. So we know we need to implement that program next year. And then finally, you may recall several years ago, we said during these budget meetings that we were in negotiations with all of our unions to have a plan designed to our health insurance. We got all of our employment groups to agree to it. And the promise at that time was that it would help stabilize our health insurance increases. And I know you pretty much heard the same thing from my colleague from Spencer East Brookfield. With our plan design changes, we increased co-pays, we introduced a deductible, and for the past 2 years, we've had extremely stable rates. They've been the same. And next year, we're actually seeing a 2% decrease. So it was accurate information when you hear that districts and towns are seeing, double-digit increases. We're pretty excited about the fact for 3 years, over that 3-year period, we've actually seen a decrease in our health insurance costs. On slide number 11, you see how we've allocated our freshman seats. We're anticipating that we will bring in 315 freshmen, of which Spencer owns 25 of those seats. On page or slide number, what are we at, 12? At slide number 12, you see the foundation enrollment at Bay Path, and you can see that the town of Spencer's foundation enrollment for next year decreased by 8 students, and this will largely be why you're seeing a slight decrease in your total assessment, and we'll go over that in 1 minute. Moving to page 13, you can see your total town's foundation enrollment. Next year, you will be funding 4 students, which I suspect are going to agricultural schools. You have 1,233 students in the Spencer East Brookfield district, and then the 148 students at Bay Path. One thing to be very cognizant about is when you look at your town in total, you have lost 35 students over the current year. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but that's having a major impact on the town's ability to fund education. When you think about the loss of Chapter 70 funding that's associated with that. On slide number 14, these are just some numbers for you to have to understand where all these numbers we talk about come from. The first is your required local contribution, and that's an amount that the state identifies that you have to provide for education locally at a minimum, certainly not at a maximum. And where does that number come from? It starts with this year's required contribution, and that amount is increased by the town's municipal revenue growth factor. I know you finance committee members hear that term a lot, and it goes into so many things that impact town finances, but this is one example of how it impacts your requirement to fund education. This year's required local contribution is increased by that municipal revenue growth factor, giving you your required contribution for next year. And you can see how that has increased from $8,483,494 to $8,712,548. The state also establishes for the town a foundation budget. And the foundation budget for next year for the town of Spencer is $18,042,838. That amount is then broken out or allocated to whatever entities have students that the town's educating. So the town of Spencer, for those 4 Aggie students, your foundation budget's $59,772. For your regional local school district, it's $15,343,959, and for Bay Path, it's $2,639,107. Most importantly is if you look to the right of those numbers, you see a percentage, and that percentage comes into play on how your required local contribution is allocated, and you'll see that on slide number 15. You see your required contribution of $8,712,548, and then those percentages that we just talked about are how your required contribution gets allocated to the towns or to the different entities. So again, that's just some data for you to understand where these numbers come from. On page 16 or slide number 16, I think in this report or in this presentation, this is probably the most telling information. It's based on a report that is filed each year called the School Attending Children Report. And what this report counts is every school-age student that lives in your town, from kindergarten through 12th grade, regardless of whether or not they're in a public school, a private school, a charter school, or being homeschooled. This is the total amount of school-age children residing in your town and in this chart in our district. And if you look all the way to the right, the last 2 columns, from the last year that we used this to the current year, district-wide, we've lost 249 students. And Spencer has lost 28 students. And if you look at us as a district since school year 2014-15, district-wide, we have lost 1,221 students. Just imagine the millions upon millions of dollars in lost state aid strictly because there are that many fewer school-age students residing in our district. And that is definitely probably the most biggest impact on financing in the district. Moving on to slide number 17, I've given you a breakdown of how we've determined your town's assessment along with the other 9 district communities. And if we look at the town of Spencer, starting with the second column, your minimum contribution of $1,274,375, which again is a number established by the state. Moving to the right, we're not asking for anything above that minimum. Again, continuing to the right, you see the transportation assessment of $39,764. Continuing to the right, you see your debt service of $124,972. You see your share of the capital improvement of $2,457, making your total assessment $1,441,548. $568. On slide 18, we're looking at your total assessment compared to this year, or next year compared to this year. You can see your minimum contribution amount went up a little less than 0.5%. Your transportation assessment has decreased. Your debt service and capital improvement assessments have decreased. So your total assessment to BayPath has dropped by $2,939. Now, I know you spent a lot of time earlier discussing the ESSA 2 funds. So I won't go over what you heard previously, but I do want to point out a few things. First of all, and I'm going to actually move to slide number 20, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on slide number 20. It's there for your informational purposes, but it does illustrate how the amounts that are being allowed to lower your municipal local contribution are determined. So for us at BayPath, and I'm looking in the very first column that's entitled Southern Worcester County Regional, if you look about halfway down that column, you can see what our ESSA 2 allocation or grant is going to be under the governor's budget. That's $447,033. 75% of that is the maximum amount that could be allocated to lower municipal contributions. Below that, it's doled out by looking at the required minimum local contributions. So collectively, as we heard earlier, our 10 towns are required to give us $9,827,933. Spencer, if you move across to the right, you'll see that you make up 13% of that $9.8 million number, making the total amount of ESSA funds that could be allocated to you from our funds at $43,475. But because your minimum contribution only increased by $3,884, that's the maximum amount of those funds that you could use to lower your local contributions. And then you can see, if you look all the way to the bottom column and row, collectively, our 10 towns can see a reduction in their local contributions of $251,165. On pages 21 or chart 21 and 22, I've just shown you how that decrease, if applied to your minimum contribution, and then on page 22, your total assessment would affect it. But in essence, it's a reduction of $3,884. On slide number 23, and I'm actually going to read this because right now, this is in the governor's proposal. I can tell you that there's a very strong push from the educational side to get this section of the governor's budget out of it as the state works on their budget. So since there's no way of knowing if this provision will be included in the final state budget, the assessments adopted by the school committee do not include the reduction of the town's MLC, or minimum local contribution, by its ESSA 2 share of the calculation. If the school committee were to apply that reduction now, and the provision is not included in the final state budget, the 8 towns who would have been eligible to receive a reduction would need to increase their funding for BayPath at special town meetings. And that's because our assessments are at the minimum. So if we said to Spencer, your assessment is going to be $3,884 lower because of this provision in the governor's budget, and then it was cut out of the final state budget, you will have already had your spring town meeting, you would have already appropriated an assessment for us, and it would be short by that $3,884. The school committee is fully aware that the request to apply these funds lies solely with the town. And we're of the belief that all of our towns, all of our 8 towns who are eligible to request these funds will do it. And we're prepared to deal with that. As was done in December of 2020, the school committee typically returns excess funds that are received by the district after the adoption of the budget and lowers assessments. If this is included in the final state budget, the school committee has already committed to returning those funds upon request of the towns. So I know I went through this rather quickly. I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Dean. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Akabuchi or Mr. Brenner?
Madam Chairman, I just want to welcome Mr. Brenner, and as a former superintendent, I wish you nothing but the best. You inherited a good ship, I think, and I'm sure you'll pilot it ahead the way it should be piloted. So, welcome to the area. I don't know where you came from, don't know much about you, but welcome to the area.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Thank you very much. I came from, just to give you some background, I was a principal formerly at Worcester Technical High School in Worcester. So we've been colleagues in the world of vocational education. I admired John LaFleche, and I truly admire the work that Dean has done on this budget. And, I'll just build upon that going forward. So I'm looking forward to the challenge, and I want to take the opportunity to thank you all for being so involved with the school up here.
Thank you. Did you replace Miss Harity?
I did. I worked along with Dr. Harity. I was the director of vocational education, and when she moved on to her superintendency, I took over the principalship. So that was an extraordinary ride at Worcester Tech, going from the old building to the new building, and yeah.
Now, they have a beautiful building there, and we're proud that Lamoureux and Pagano designed it, because Dick Lamoureux was born and brought up and lived in Spencer his whole life, and he designed 3 of the schools in the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District that I was pleased to work with him on the building of 2 of those 3 schools. And I was a colleague of Dr. Harity's up north when I was superintendent for the Ashburnham Westminster Regional School District. So I wish you nothing but the best, sir.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Did I hear a voice? Somebody have a question?
I did.
Oh, Nancy Tame, go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering about the numbers of students in the district. You said overall the numbers of students are going down. Is that because the birth rate in our area, we just are in a growing area, but the rest of the state is growing, isn't it? Or is it not? Are we just flat as far as students growth overall?
I can't speak as to what's happening, statewide, because I just haven't looked at it. But I can tell you that in conversations with colleagues, it's a trend we're seeing everywhere, that districts are losing students simply because the amount of school-age students residing in those towns is decreasing. And that could be, for one of a dozen reasons. People moving out, people choosing to have less less children. There's really no one reason that it's happening. And, I pointed out for our 10 towns so that, people can see it's not just their town. It's just about every town in the district. And I think once you move west of Boston, I think you see it happening more than less in most towns.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good thing. I don't know. Population is not necessarily growing, I guess. I don't know. It is hard.
The trend. Yeah. Nancy, the trend has been for the school populations has been decreasing overall statewide.
Oh, it is.
We saw this coming. We saw this coming in Spencer East Brookfield. Oh gosh, more than 10 years ago. I'm going to say about maybe 13, 14 years ago, before I went up Ashburnham, Westminster. I saw the trends in Spencer, East Brookfield. I knew there were going to be graduating classes that were going to be very small from Prouty. And it's Western and Central Mass in particular have suffered an awful lot of losses, but it's a complicated manner. There's no one reason that was said, by Superintendent Brenner. There's no one reason for it, but it's good and it's bad. I'm not going to get into that, but it's happening almost everywhere from what I can tell around here. So that's it. Thank you.
It is. Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Brenner or Mr. Akabuchi?
Mary?
Bill?
Welcome, Mr. Brenner. It's a pleasure. I have served, as you heard earlier, on a regional school board myself. 2 questions. One, are you looking to add or tweak your programming any to attract new students in order to kind of reverse that trend a little bit? And then secondly, since this will be broadcast to a lot of the voters in Spencer and East Brookfield, can you briefly talk about what you're doing to support and encourage your school staff to become vaccinated now that they're eligible?
Sure. So I'll talk to the first one through the chair. We are expanding our programming, as Mr. Akabuchi spoke to. The vet tech, it was supposed to open this year, but due to COVID and the delay in the constructions, our students do the construction. We're working with the Second Chance Animal Shelter in Southbridge. It delayed the opening of that. We're on target to open that next year, so that will attract new students on it. In terms of the total population, while the district has seen an overall decrease, I am happy to say that the population at Bay Path has remained steady throughout those years. So we're looking to stay at 315 incoming freshmen. We were at that target number last year. We do have, we received more applications than we have seats allocated at this time. So our population will remain there. I think, and Mr. Akabuchi can correct me if I'm wrong, he has the history, but we are at capacity for the total number of students that this building can support for build out. So 1,200 students, we're looking to hold it at 1,200 students going forward. We just don't have the capacity to add more academic or technical programming at the school at this time on that. In terms of vaccination, I am happy to report that we have remained in a hybrid mode throughout the year. Our protocols have been put in place. Knock on wood, we haven't had a transmission within the school facility itself. We do a comprehensive contact tracing. Our students, it's a testament to both our students and the staff for adhering to the comprehensive safety and health protocols we've put in place. We're currently underway to make the plans. We sent a family survey out to go to full in-person with the what we've seen, the commissioner and the mandate that K through 5, April 5th, middle schools, April 28th, and they'll be announcing when high schools should return to 100% full in-person. We've put the plans in place to figure out our pinch hold really is that lunchtime with the 6-foot minimum spacing when the masks are removed on that. So we're looking at erecting a tent outside. We're putting more seats in our gymnasium, which isn't a gymnasium, it's a cafeteria right now and has been all year. In terms of faculty vaccinations, we've been working closely with all the vaccination sites, but more importantly, Harrington and Southbridge set aside certain days and a certain allotment of vaccines for educators that for the catchment area that they serve. So that's Dudley, Charlton, and Tantascwa, and Webster, and Southbridge, as well as Bay Path as well. So most of our faculty that wants to be vaccinated was able to secure one of those coveted appointments to get the vaccine. And as they release more, we release that to our faculty, so those that still haven't gotten it have that opportunity. So we're on track with our vaccination schedule to have our faculty and staff fully vaccinated, hopefully, although it's not required to have it for the reopening, but hopefully those that wanted it will be vaccinated for the full return of our students in the end of April timeframe.
Thank you. I just have one quick question. So you're sending your students out to job sites was absolutely not done at all this year?
No, we did. So it was kind of a controlled process at the beginning of the year. No students went out to the co-ops or internships, and all offsite projects were on hold. So as we worked with the Career and Technical Education Department of the Department of Education, and they allowed the reopening of offsite jobs. So as the restrictions were lessened, we were able to get our students into the co-op positions, and then our job sites opened up. Our restaurant's not open, and the school's not open to the public for cars and auto detail and that type of stuff. But our house build in North Brookfield will be finished up this year. We were able to get over to Second Chance and do the build over there so that we can open our program next year in partnership with them. And I'm happy to say, if you're ever out this way, we are open for curbside pickup in the restaurant. So you can still enjoy the delicious food, just not on the facility.
That's great. Thank you. And I do want to say also that I do appreciate the work in the charts that and the graphs that you provide. It really makes it clear because it's universal. It applies to education across the board. And it's just one more help for all of us to clarify some of the relationships of the funding and so on.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. So if there are no other questions or comments from the board, from
Mary, I
Board
would
of
just
the
like
Finance
to
Committee.
extend, as I indicated to Superintendent Haughey earlier, we all greatly appreciate everything your staff does each and every day under these extremely challenging times and the risks they're taking to ensure that our students continue to be educated. And we would like you to convey that to them on our behalf.
I certainly will. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So this concludes the joint part of the meeting. So certainly members of the Board of Selectmen are welcome to stay, but Dr. Hicks, if you would like to adjourn your meeting, you're welcome to. Up to
Yes,
you.
thank you, Mary. Do I have a motion to adjourn the select board?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made, seconded, roll call vote. Mr. Pepe. We'll come back to Tony. Mrs. Berthium?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Woodbury?
Aye.
Mr. Pepe, are you there? He may have dropped off. Chair votes aye, with the Board of Selectmen is adjourned. Thank you all, and I appreciate everyone's efforts this evening and throughout the year. Have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ralph. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Finance Committee will make the rest of the meeting real quick. Tom, was there any correspondence? Anything in the mailbox and anything in our mailboxes?
I didn't see anything, Mary.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Liaison reports. Bill, you probably don't have a ton to say since we had the
No,
meeting.
and given the lateness of the hour, I'm going to make everyone happy and not say anything further.
Okay, thanks. I will just say really quickly that the designer selection subcommittee, that'd be Dr. Haughey, Mr. Suter, and myself, will be meeting with the Mass School Building Authority, the 12 members of their committee, to review the 8 applications we got as for the architects on April 6th. So it'll be a remote meeting on April 6th. At that time, the expectation is the 8 will be reduced to 3. And then 2 weeks later, so those 3, those 3 or however many will come in and do a presentation or do a remote presentation, I guess, now. And so that's where we're at. Chris Woodbury, did you want to talk about the capital committee, or do you want to wait till next time? Is there anything we need to know?
Capital Committee met this past week. We went over all the department's needs. There's never a small list, it's always a large list. We need to get our rankings to Tom by no later than Thursday of this week so he can compile them for our next meeting, which is the 30th.
Great. Thank you very much. Next, Tom, do you have any town administrators report? Do you have anything?
Sure, Madam Chair. So I've been, working through the budget, making small adjustments here and there. Unfortunately, I have taken out the facilities maintenance position. I know no one wants to hear that. That was that would have been the new highway position for fiscal 22. And I've taken it out for now because to be able to fund it at this point would have required a transfer from free cash of about $40,000. And I didn't think, and still don't think, that that's a prudent move right now. I thought that would overextend the town. And I don't think that's a good idea given what could potentially take place in fiscal 23 with the use of the ESSER funds. So the Board of Selectmen will not be voting on the ESSER fund authorization until April 12th. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is issue fiscal projection number 2 next week, which will assume that the board does authorize the grant funds. And my budget will basically be crafted around that assumption. Now, that could change on April 12th, but I have to put something together for discussion purposes. So I'll have that fiscal projection number 2 ready next week, and I'll issue that to both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. I will say the Insurance Advisory Committee met earlier this week, and they're recommending a switch from Altus Dental to Maya Dental, which is a Blue Cross Blue Shield offering, because it yields some savings, not a tremendous amount, but it yields some savings to both the town and to the subscriber. And I'll be sharing that recommendation with the Board of Selectmen, and the board will be voting also on April 12th on whether to make that transfer, or I should say the switch from Altus to Maya. It's the same plan design, essentially the same plan design, and essentially the same network of providers. So that's the only other new addition in the budget, new thing to talk about, and everything else is pretty much stay the same. So that's all I have right now, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. And I'll just let everybody know that you did send out the draft warrant last night, and we will be taking that up. We'll be reviewing that next at our next meeting next Tuesday night, because we figured that to leave it until tonight to start on it tonight would just be some extra time. And so in the interest of moving along, that's it. So I think we're done. Does anyone have anything else?
Since you have a quorum, you could vote to accept the minutes of the last
Oh,
meeting.
thank you. Sure. Okay, we did skip over the meeting minutes from March 9th because we did not have a quorum when we started. So that being said, you all received the minutes in the mail. Would someone care to make a motion to accept the minutes of March 9th?
Motion to approve.
Chris Woodbury, right? Second?
Yes.
Second. It's Ed.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, roll call vote. Ed?
Aye.
Dennis,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Chris Bowen,
Aye.
and Chris Woodbury.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. All right, so our next meeting is next Tuesday, March 30th at 7 o'clock. We'll have police, utilities and facilities, water and sewer, and we'll be reviewing the warrant. If any of you have any additional questions that about anything that came up tonight that you just want to mull over and get more information on, just shoot me a quick email, and I'll be happy to do whatever research there is. And if there's nothing else, then I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Who was that? Chris
Woodbury.
Chris Woodbury. That's what I thought. Second?
Second again.
Okay, thanks, Ed. All right. Roll call vote. Ed?
Aye.
Dennis?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Chris Bowen?
Aye.
Chris Woodbury?
Aye.
Paul McLaughlin?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thanks, everybody, for your patience and participation. See you next week.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Mary.